The check was for $11,400. Dale Hutchkins wrote it on a Tuesday morning in June of 2009, standing at the service counter of Redfield Implement, the only KIH dealer within 73 miles of his farm outside Hays, Kansas. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't ask to see a manager one more time. He just wrote the check, took the receipt, and walked out to his truck. The tractor sitting in the service bay behind him. A 2005 KIH MX255 with 4,100 hours on it had a transmission that had started slipping 6 weeks earlier. It was still under warranty, 5 years or 5,000 hours, whichever came first. He was 11 months inside that window. The repair should have cost him nothing. Instead, it cost him $11,400, and a decision that would take a dealership, a brand, and a county's worth of loyal customers another 18 months to fully understand. But before we get to what Dale did next, you need to understand what he had built. Because the man who walked out of Redfield Implement that Tuesday morning wasn't a newcomer. He wasn't someone who'd bought one machine and felt entitled to complain. He was the kind of farmer whose loyalty had been worth something real. And what Redfield Implement did to that loyalty, what they threw away to save $8,400, is the kind of story that takes years to finish telling. Dale Hutchkins had been buying KIH equipment from Redfield Implement since 1979. 30 years. 11 machines, 2 combines, 4 tractors, 3 planters, a disc ripper, a grain cart, over $400,000 in equipment purchases from one dealership financed through KIH credit, every payment made on time. He had never filed a warranty claim that was denied. He had never raised his voice in their showroom. He had never asked for anything that wasn't owed to him. His father had run International Harvester equipment through the 1960s and 70s. A fleet of old workhorses that were still sitting in the back shed when Dale took over the operation, rusted but never sold because that generation didn't discard what had served them. When Case and International Harvester merged in 1985, Dale's father stayed loyal. When Dale took over the farm in 1995, he kept that loyalty. Not for the paint color, not for the brand identity, but because Redfield Implement had been fair. They'd honored warranties without argument. They'd delivered parts on time. They'd sent mechanics out to the field when Dale couldn't afford the downtime to drive in. That fairness had been worth something. It had been worth 30 years of business, and it had been worth more than $400,000 in machines rolling off their lot. The MX255 had been bought new in April of 2005, $87,400, financed through KIH credit. Dale had made every payment. In the spring of 2009, 4 years into that machine's life, the transmission began to fail. Fourth gear slipping under load, power dropping past 1,800 RPM. He brought it to Redfield on a Monday, told them what it was doing, and left it overnight. 3 days later, they called him back. The transmission failure, they said, was not covered. Operator abuse. No documentation, no photographs, no technical breakdown of what specific abuse had occurred. Just a verbal denial and a repair estimate of $11,300. Dale asked to see the damaged parts. The service manager told him they'd already been disposed of. That was the moment. Not the denial. Not the cost. The moment the parts disappeared before he could see them. That was when Dale understood what he was worth to them after 30 years. He paid the bill on June 2nd, 2009. He drove the MX255 home, and that weekend he made a phone call to an auctioneer in Salina. The auction catalog went out 3 weeks later. Every piece of KIH equipment Dale owned was in it. The 2005 MX255 with the repaired transmission, a 2003 KIH STX 375 Steiger he'd bought used in 2007, a 1998 KIH 2388 combine with 2,900 separator hours, a 2006 KIH 1200 planter, a disc ripper, a grain cart, a field cultivator, 11 machines total. Redfield Implement heard about it the same week the catalog went out. The sales manager called Dale and asked if there was a problem. Dale said no. The sales manager asked if Dale was getting out of farming. Dale said no. The sales manager asked what brand he was switching to. Dale didn't answer that question. He just said the auction was firm and hung up. Redfield Implement didn't send anyone to the sale, but 140 other people showed up. Most of them were farmers. Some were dealers from 2 counties over, and 18 of them, 18, were men who had been buying from Redfield Implement for 15 to 35 years. They didn't buy anything at Dale's auction, they just watched. The MX255 sold for $52,000. The Steiger brought $91,000. The Combine went for $38,000. Total sale, $310,000. After auctioneer's commission and remaining loan balances, Dale cleared $104,000. He used it to buy used John Deere equipment at 2 other auctions that summer: a 7810 tractor, a 9650 combine, a 1770 planter. None of it was new, none of it was flashy, but all of it came without a relationship to Redfield Implement. By August, Dale Hutchkins was back in the field, running green iron for the first time in 30 years, and Redfield Implement still didn't understand what had happened. Now here's where this story gets bigger than one farmer and one dealership. The story of Dale's warranty denial spread slowly, not through social media, not through organized protest. It spread the way things spread in rural Kansas, over coffee at the grain elevator and conversations at the co-op during parts runs and fuel stops and the long, slow hours of harvest. One farmer mentioned it to another. That farmer mentioned it to someone else. Within 6 weeks, nearly every KIH customer within 100 miles of Hayes had heard some version of what happened. The details varied. Some said the transmission was denied because of bad hydraulic fluid. Some said it was improper operation in wet conditions. Some said the dealership claimed he'd been shifting wrong. But the core facts never changed. A 58-year-old farmer with 30 years of loyalty. A 4-year-old tractor with 4,100 hours. A warranty denial with no documentation, parts thrown away before he could inspect them, an $11,000 bill. Every farmer who heard it asked himself the same question: what would I have done? And most of them arrived at the same answer Dale did. The first farmer to leave was Victor Alms, 61 years old, 1,200 acres north of Hayes. He'd been buying from Redfield since 1995, 6 machines over 14 years. In late August, he brought his 2007 KIH Puma 180 in for routine service. While he waited, he asked the parts manager if anyone at the dealership had reviewed the Hutchkins warranty denial. The parts manager said it wasn't his department. Victor asked if management had reached out to Dale. The parts manager said he didn't know. Victor paid for the service, drove home, and called a John Deere dealer in Russell. 2 weeks later, he traded the Puma 180 and a KIH 7120 combine toward a Deere 8330 and a 9770 STS. Redfield Implement lost a $54,000 trade-in. Victor didn't tell anyone at the dealership why he'd left. He didn't file a complaint. He didn't write a letter. He just stopped coming in. The second farmer to leave was Carl Stauffer, 55 years old, 2,400 acres, KIH customer since 1983. Carl had watched the entire Dale Hutchkins situation unfold, and he'd asked around. Nobody could explain the denial. Nobody had seen the damaged parts. Nobody had been given a technical explanation. When the service manager at Redfield asked if Carl wanted to look at the new Magnum 290s on the lot, Carl said no. In October, Carl traded his entire fleet toward New Holland equipment at a dealership in Hoisington. 3 tractors, 1 combine, 2 planters. Redfield Implement lost $87,000 in potential trade-in value. Carl didn't explain why he left. He didn't need to. By November 2009, Redfield Implement had lost 4 long-term customers. By February 2010, that number was 9. By May, it was 14. These weren't young farmers experimenting with brands. These were men in their 50s and 60s who had been loyal to KIH for 20 to 35 years. Men who had financed equipment through KIH credit. Men who scheduled service 6 months in advance. They were leaving without warning. No arguments, no complaints filed with corporate, no dramatic confrontations in the showroom. They just stopped coming in. And when the dealership called to follow up on trade-in offers, the answer was always the same. We're good. We'll call if we need anything. And they never called. The dealership's general manager was a man named Ron Dortch. He'd been running Redfield Implement since 1997. He'd grown the business through the farm boom of the mid-2000s. In 2008, Redfield had sold $4.2 million in KIH equipment, their best year on record. In 2009, that number dropped to $3.1 million. Ron assumed it was the economy. Commodity prices had collapsed. Wheat had dropped from nearly $10 a bushel to under $5. Corn had fallen by half. Credit was tight. Farmers were holding off on new purchases. It made sense. But by spring of 2010, Ron started hearing a different story. Farmers weren't holding off. They were buying. They just weren't buying from Redfield. In March 2010, Ron drove to a farm sale in Ellis County. A retiring farmer was selling a full line of late-model KIH equipment, a Magnum 305, a 7010 combine, a 1200 planter, all well-maintained, all under 3,000 hours. Ron expected competitive bidding. What he saw instead was hesitation. The Magnum 305 should have brought $140,000. It sold for $98,000. The combine should have brought $175,000. It went for $131,000. After the sale, Ron asked the auctioneer what had happened. The auctioneer looked at him for a moment. Then he said, "People are nervous about KIH right now." Ron asked why. The auctioneer said, "You'd have to ask them." The story that kept coming up, 3 counties away, from farmers who had only heard it secondhand, was Dale Hutchkins. By summer of 2010, Redfield implement sales had dropped to $2.4 million. Ron Dortch called a meeting with his service manager and his sales team. He asked directly, what happened with Dale Hutchkins? The service manager explained that the MX-255 transmission had failed due to operator abuse. Dale had been running the tractor in 4th gear under heavy load without downshifting. Ron asked if they'd documented that. The service manager said no. Ron asked if they'd photographed the damaged parts. The service manager said no. Ron asked why the parts had been disposed of before Dale could inspect them. The service manager said it was standard procedure. Ron asked if they'd consulted with KIH's warranty team before denying the claim. The service manager said no. The decision had been made locally based on the mechanic's assessment. Ron sat there for a long time. Then he asked, "How much did we save by denying that claim?" The service manager said, "Around $8,400. Ron looked at his sales records. He looked at the list of customers who had left. Then he said, "How much business have we lost since then?" Nobody answered, because nobody had calculated it yet. Ron did the math that afternoon. 14 customers lost. Average trade-in value per customer, $62,000. Average new equipment purchase per customer, $95,000. Total estimated loss, $740,000, all to save $8,400. In August 2010, Ron Dortch called KIH corporate in Racine, Wisconsin. He explained everything. KIH sent a regional sales manager named Kevin Marsh to Hayes in September. Kevin spent 3 days reviewing records and visiting farms. On the 3rd day, he drove out to Dale Hutchkins' farm. Dale was in the shop changing oil on his Deere 7810. Kevin introduced himself. Asked what had happened with the MX-255. Dale told him. Kevin asked if Dale had any documentation. Dale showed him the warranty denial letter, a single page, no technical detail, just a stamped phrase across the bottom. Claim denied, operator abuse. Kevin asked if Dale had tried to appeal. Dale said no. Kevin asked why. Dale said, "Because I didn't trust them anymore." Kevin asked if there was anything KIH could do to earn that trust back. Dale looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "You could start by not asking me that question." Kevin left. In October 2010, KIH Corporate sent a letter to Redfield Implement. All future warranty denials would require photo documentation, third-party mechanical analysis, and corporate approval before being communicated to customers. Redfield would be required to attend a warranty compliance training seminar in January 2011. The letter did not mention Dale Hutchkins. It did not offer him compensation. It did not apologize. Ron called Kevin Marsh and asked if corporate planned to reach out to Dale directly. Kevin said that wasn't part of the current plan. Ron asked why. Kevin said, "Because we can't fix what already happened. We can only prevent it from happening again." Ron understood the logic, but he also understood it wouldn't bring back the 14 farmers who had already left. By December 2010, Redfield Implement had lost 19 long-term customers. Total estimated loss in trade-in value and new equipment sales, $1,740,000. Ron Dortch tried to rebuild, new service manager in early 2011, extended warranties on all new equipment, personal calls to every farmer who had left, 10% over book value on any trade-in, 0% financing for 36 months, free service for the first year. None of them came back. Most were polite. They thanked Ron for calling. They said they appreciated the offer, but they didn't come back. Victor Alms bought a new Deere 8335R in 2012. Carl Stauffer bought a New Holland T95 in 2013. Dale Hutchkins bought a used Deere 8420 in 2014. All three of them are still farming. None of them have bought a KIH machine since 2009. When asked why, their answers are similar. It wasn't worth the risk, not the risk of equipment failure, the risk of not being believed when something went wrong. In 2015, Redfield Implement closed its Hayes location. The building was sold to a farm supply company that now sells fence posts, livestock feed, and bulk seed. The KIH sign was taken down in June. The nearest KIH dealer is now 94 miles away in Great Bend. Ron Dortch took a job managing a John Deere dealership in Colby. He's still there. The service manager who denied Dale Hutchkins' warranty claim left the industry in 2011. Nobody knows where he is now. Dale Hutchkins still farms the same 1,800 acres outside Hayes. He's in his mid-70s now. His son Jason farms alongside him. In 2018, Jason asked his father if they should look at the new KIH Magnum 380, one of the most powerful row crop tractors on the market. 380 horsepower, CVT transmission, GPS-guided steering. The dealer in Great Bend was offering aggressive trade-in incentives. Dale said no. Jason asked why. Dale didn't explain. He just said, "We're good with what we've got." Jason didn't ask again. But later that week, Jason asked his mother why his father refused to even consider KIH equipment. She told him the story. Jason had been 16 in 2009. He'd known his father sold all the equipment that summer, but he'd never understood why. Now he did. In 2021, a farm equipment journalist writing about dealer loyalty contacted Dale and asked if he'd be willing to talk about why he'd left KIH. Dale said no. The journalist asked if it was about the warranty denial. Dale said it wasn't about the money. The journalist asked what it was about. Dale said it was about the parts they threw away. The journalist didn't understand. Dale explained, "When they denied the claim, I could have fought it. I could have hired a lawyer. I could have filed a complaint with corporate, but the moment they threw away the transmission parts, they made it clear they didn't want me to fight it. They wanted me to accept it and move on. And that told me everything I needed to know about what I was worth to them after 30 years. The journalist asked if Dale ever regretted leaving. Dale said, "No. But I regret that it took me 30 years to realize loyalty only matters when both sides honor it." The 2005 KIH MX 255 that Dale sold at auction in 2009 is still running. It was bought by a farmer in Nebraska who put another 6,000 hours on it before selling it in 2017. The second owner put another 3,200 hours on it before trading it in 2022. The transmission has never failed again. The machine that Redfield Implement said was abused has now been running for 16 years in the hands of 3 different owners. The machine they charged Dale $11,400 to repair, on a warranty they should have honored, has outlasted the dealership that denied it, the service manager who disposed of the evidence, and the brand's presence in Hayes County entirely. There is a phrase used in rural communities when a business makes a decision that costs them more than they saved. They stepped over $1 to pick up a dime. Redfield Implement saved $8,400 by denying Dale Hutchkins' warranty claim in June of 2009. Over the next 18 months, they lost $1,740,000 in trade-in value and new equipment sales. But the real cost wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in 19 farmers who watched what happened and made a quiet decision. They didn't protest, they didn't organize, they didn't file complaints, they just stopped coming in. And when the dealership called to ask why, the answer was always the same. We're good. We'll call if we need anything. They never called. In 2023, a farm equipment analyst published a study on dealer loyalty in the Midwest. One of the findings: 73% of farmers who leave a brand after a warranty dispute never return, even if the dispute is later resolved in their favor. The reason given most often wasn't anger. It wasn't even the money. It was exhaustion. The exhaustion of having to fight for something that should have been honored in the first place. The exhaustion of realizing that loyalty is a one-way transaction until it's tested. The exhaustion of knowing that 30 years of business can be erased by a single decision to save $8,400. Dale Hutchkins is in his mid-70s now. He still farms, he still runs Green Iron, and he still remembers the Tuesday morning in June of 2009 when he wrote a check for $11,400 at a counter in Hays, Kansas. Not because of the money, but because of what happened to the parts. They were thrown away before he could see them, and that told him everything he needed to know. The service manager who made that decision probably thought he was protecting the dealership from a fraudulent claim. He probably thought he was saving money. He probably thought a single denied warranty wouldn't matter in the long run. He was wrong. Because in farming communities, nothing is forgotten, and loyalty once broken is almost never repaired. The 2005 KIH MX255 is still out there, somewhere, still running, still working, still carrying the memory of a decision that cost a dealership 19 customers, $1,700,000 in sales, and a location that no longer exists. All because someone decided that $8,400 was worth more than 30 years of trust. It wasn't.